Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So we're studying Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. We're on chapter 7, and we're about to finish it, actually. And so before we begin, are there any comments or questions that anyone has about what we've studied so far in all of this or in any of it? All right then. Where is any more misery for whom, where is any more misery for him who sees this oneness in the universe? This is another great theme of the Vedanta, this oneness of life, this oneness of everything. We shall see how it demonstrates that all our misery comes through ignorance. And this ignorance is the idea of manifoldness, this separation between man and man, between nation and nation, between earth and moon, between moon and sun. Out of the idea of separation between atom and atom comes all misery. So I'm going to read that again because this is the concluding idea. This is another great theme of the Vedanta, this oneness of life, this oneness of everything. We shall see how it demonstrates that all our misery comes through ignorance, and this ignorance is the idea of manifoldness, this separation between man and man, between nation and nation, between earth and moon, between moon and sun. Out of this idea of separation between atom and atom comes all misery. But the Vedanta says this separation does not exist. It is not real. It is merely apparent on the surface. In the heart of things, there is unity still. If you go below the surface, you find that unity between man and man, between races and races, high and low, rich and poor, gods and men and animals. If you go deep enough, all will be seen as only variations of the one. And he who has attained to this conception of oneness has no more delusion. What can delude him? He knows the reality of everything, the secret of everything. Where is there any more misery for him? What does he desire? He has traced the reality of everything to the Lord, the center, the unity of everything, and that is eternal existence, eternal knowledge, eternal bliss. Neither death nor disease, nor sorrow nor misery, nor discontent is there. All is perfect union and perfect bliss. For whom should he mourn then? In the reality, there is no death. There is no misery. In the reality, there is no one to mourn for, no one to be sorry for. He has penetrated everything, the pure one, the formless, the bodiless, the stainless. He the knower, he the great poet, the self-existence, he who is giving to everyone what he deserves. They grope in darkness who worship this ignorant world, the world that is produced out of ignorance, thinking of it as existence. And those who live their lives, those who live their whole lives in this world and never find anything better or higher, are groping in still greater darkness. But he who knows the secret of nature, seeing that which is beyond nature, through the help of nature, he crosses death, and through the help of that which is beyond nature, he enjoys eternal bliss. Thou sun, who hast covered the truth with thy golden disk, do thou remove the veil, so that I may see the truth that is within thee. I have known the truth that is within thee. I have known what is the real meaning of my rays, of thy rays. I have known the real meaning of thy rays and thy glory, and have seen that which shines in thee, the truth in thee. I see, and that which is within thee is within me, and I am that. Is there any question or comment at all? That's the end of chapter 7.
Brother Shankara,
Yes.
can we sort of discuss a little bit this statement? But he who knows the secret of nature, seeing that which is beyond nature through the help of nature, he crosses death. What does he mean by knowing the secret of nature or seeing that which is beyond nature through the help of nature?
As we sit here this evening, we are within nature. We are within Maya, time, space, and causation. And Swami Vivekananda has left us this exalted teaching, which is also within nature. And so this is the help of nature. This is why he came, why Sri Ramakrishna came, why Holy Mother came. The others of what Sri Ramakrishna called his band of minstrels came to bring this secret to us. So Swami Vivekananda is giving us the secret of nature. He himself is within nature, is part of nature as that human entity. And so is pointing to us like a signpost in a wasteland, pointing to an oasis. He is saying it is this way, come this way. So that is, nature is another name for Maya. Shakti is another name for nature or Maya. Divine Mother is another name for nature or Maya or Shakti. These are all interchangeable terms used in different contexts. So we can say that, as we do in our opening prayer, may the divine being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the divine being support and nourish us. And that support and nourish us has the most obvious dimension, but it also has the deepest dimension, support and nourish us in our quest. That is nature. And that is deliberately helping us. Each of the great teachers who comes, especially the avatars, comes as to be part of nature. As Christ said, I am the vine, ye are the branches, a very natural image, an image out of nature. But notice the oneness in it, the unity. The root is God the Father. He, the vine, is one with the root, the Father, and the branches are one with the vine. So it's a non-dual image within this idea of nature or manyness. Does that clarify?
Yes, Brother Shankara, thank you very much. That's I understood. Thank you.
Good. Anything else, particularly about this idea of the delusion of manifoldness? The delusion of manyness. As Vivekananda said in another context, we are infinite dreamers, dreaming finite dreams. This dream of manyness, of manifoldness, as he put it. Any comments or
Some of
questions?
this made me think of when I watched documentaries of people who had near-death experiences, and they talked to each other and they consistently agreed that there's like a unity underlying all things that they only saw when they were crossing over to the other side. So we can't really see it now, unfortunately.
Yes. Well, we can't see it this moment, Ramadas, but we can see it. This is the promise that the Swami is making us. The title of the next chapter, the next talk, is Realization. How do we go from this delusion of manyness, of manifoldness, to seeing it? And it is actually a kind of seeing. The first great realization is called Savikalpa Samadhi. That is, it is still within time, space, and causation, but it blows away all the definitions and delineations and shows this, as you said, underlying unity. And that's what these people have when they have those near-death experiences, is a kind of Savikalpa Samadhi, where they actually see the unity behind the manyness.
Right. And I'm wondering if maybe that's what Steve Jobs saw when he was about to leave. And he said, oh, wow, oh, wow, oh, wow. And then
Yeah, it must have been something like that, don't you think? It must have been, because he really did. Apparently he said that with such conviction that it just wowed everybody in the room. His wows wowed everyone in the room. They somehow shared his, whatever it was, they shared the feeling of it because he manifested it so strongly.
Right. And he must have had some connection with the astral planes because of the incredible inventions he came up with. Just tells me he saw what the rest of us couldn't see.
Well, whatever you call those planes, Nikola Tesla said that the alternating current motor and alternating current generator came to him in a vision. He didn't invent them; they simply came to him in a vision.
Was that before or after he had met Swami
Oh,
Vivekananda?
much before.
Okay.
Much before. He was still. I can't remember whether he was in Vienna or Prague, but he was sitting on a park bench looking into the setting sun. And this all revealed itself to him. And he said he was, the vision was so strong that he could actually bench test. If those of you who know mechanical things know what's meant by bench testing, bench test the inventions before he reduced them to, in his mind, in his greater awareness, before he reduced them to drawings so that he could actually have the parts built. Pretty amazing. But this is, again, nature. This is nature revealing itself. And it's still part of the hypnotism of manyness. But it was one of the inventions that transformed the modern world, the alternating current generator and the alternating current motor.
And Tesla invented both of those?
Yes. Well, I told you, he said he didn't invent them. He simply saw them. He transcribed them, is the way he would have put it.
Brother Shankara,
Yes,
similar experiences are reported about most discoveries, Newton, Archimedes, I'm sure so many others. So, are these people thinking about that, whatever they want to solve problem all the time, and then they get into that deep focus and the truth and the answer gets to them, or is it chance, or is it just that they're so focused and that they actually block everything else and then the answer comes to them?
well, I can speak about three people that I know of. One is Tesla. And Tesla was fascinated with the mystery of electricity. Fascinated with the mystery of electricity. All of his career was really about this mysterious force that we call electricity. And so, yes, he was constantly doing what would be called within yoga terms samyama. He was concentrating on it and clearing his mind of all other thoughts, so that there was a form of meditation and concentration on this idea, object-centered meditation and concentration, as it's called in chapter 2 of Patanjali. The second is Buckminster Fuller. Buckminster Fuller discovered the geodesic dome and many other principles that he and with him it was just intense curiosity. He would notice something. In the case of the geodesic dome, he noticed he was on a World War I warship in the South Pacific, and they stopped at this island, and and he noticed these leaves, great huge leaves that seemed to defy the law of gravity. How were they supporting the great weight of themselves and not collapsing? And so he cut a small portion, looked at it under a microscope, and discerned the structure, and so made the geodesic dome. The third is Dr. Richard Feynman. Now, Dr. Richard Feynman was apparently the man who most deeply understood quantum mechanics, how the mechanics of quantum physics actually works. He discerned this. And so he prepared something called the Feynman diagrams that that show that my knowledge about them is limited. I don't understand quantum physics, but they purport to show how energy actually moves from one state to another in the quantum realm. And here's what Richard Feynman said. Now, this man was a Nobel laureate. He was above the crowd, so to speak. He was being interviewed by the BBC one time, and the BBC interviewer said, well, Dr. Feynman, tell us what you know about God. What do you think about God? And Feynman said, well, I really don't know anything about God. And he paused for a moment, and then he got this kind of mischievous look on his face and kind of light in his eye. And he said, but I do adore Mother Nature. But I do adore Mother Nature, and I implore her to share her secrets with me. Now, that imploring for a man like Feynman means this kind of deep concentration and a form of meditation. That's how he implores Mother Nature to share her secrets with him. And so there are many, many, many. They exist today as well as these three people that I mentioned. And there are women as well. Madame Curie was one, the woman who discovered DNA, how DNA, where she never got proper credit for it. But nevertheless, she discovered the principle that underlies DNA and so on. So nature is anxious to share her secrets with us. If you want to know what's meant by that, read the poems of John O'Donohue. It's spelled O'Donohue, he's an Irishman, so it's pronounced O'Donohue. But read the poems of John O'Donohue. He was a Catholic monk, priest for 19 years, and then left the priesthood to pursue a life in art. And his specialty of his writings was the nature of the divine as the creative. And it's really quite instructive what he writes.
Thank you.
Anything else from anyone before we go on to chapter 8? I think we should discuss this. Anything that remains as a concern or a question in your mind, before we go on to Swami Vivekananda's description of how to take this from an idea to realization, well, we should have a firm grasp of what he's saying here. And if everyone is content that they have that, that's wonderful. All right, then. We'll go on to the secret. Chapter 8, Realization. Delivered in London, 29th October, 1896. So it's full-on fall, 1896. Swami Vivekananda has 6 years left to live. He leaves the body on July 4th, 1902. He's had his second experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi in June of 1895 at Thousand Island Park. So when he speaks here, he's speaking from the perspective of one who's had the full realization. So, chapter 8, Realization. I will read to you from one of the Upanishads. It is called the Kata Upanishad. Some of you perhaps have read the translation by Sir Edwin Arnold called The Secret of Death. It is our last IE. In our last IE, a previous lecture. That's what he means. In our last lecture, we saw how the inquiry which started with the origin of the world and the creation of the universe failed to obtain a satisfactory answer from without, and how it then turned inwards. This book psychologically takes up that suggestion. This book, the Kata Upanishad, psychologically takes up that suggestion, questioning into the internal nature of man. It was first asked, who created the external world and how it came into being? Now the question is, what is that in man which makes him live and move, and what becomes of that when he dies? So I'm going to repeat that because this is the crux of what he's going to attempt. It was first asked who created the external world and how it came into being. Now the question is, that is the question addressed by the Kata Upanishad. Now the question is, what is that in man which makes him live and move, and what becomes of that when he dies? The first philosophers studied the material substance and tried to reach the ultimate through that. At the best, they found a personal governor of the universe, a human being immensely magnified, but yet to all intents and purposes, a human being. But that could not be the whole of truth. At best, it could be only partial truth. We see this universe as human beings, and our God is our human explanation of the universe. So I'll repeat that. We see this universe as human beings, and our God, capital G, God, is our human explanation of the universe. Suppose a cow were philosophical and had religion. It would have a cow universe and a cow solution of the problem, and it would not be possible that it should see our God. Suppose cats became philosophers. They would see a cat universe and have a cat solution of the problem of the universe and a cat ruling it. So we see from this that our explanation of the universe is not the whole of the solution, the human explanation of the universe, and the anthropomorphic God, the personal God. We see from this that our explanation of the universe is not the whole of the solution. Neither does our conception cover the whole of the universe. It would be a great mistake to accept that tremendously selfish position which man is apt to take. Neither does our conception cover the whole of the universe. It would be a great mistake to accept that tremendously selfish position which man is apt to take. In other words, that this finite mind can explain the infinite. That's the selfish or egoistic position. Such a solution of the universal problem as we can get from the outside labors under this difficulty that in the first place, the universe we see is our own particular universe, our own view of reality. And by this, the Swami means each of us has our own universe based on the names and forms that we recognize and that we understand. We project the universe. We receive the vibrations that are the universe. And according to the names and forms that we understand, that we are able to interpret reliably, stably, out of that we make our universe. So such a solution of the universal problem as we can get from the outside labors under this difficulty that in the first place, the universe we see is our own particular universe, our own view of the reality. Now, is there any question or comment on that? Because this is now a fundamental proposition that the Swami is making. That when we try to understand the universe from our intellect, however refined it may be, it labors under, as he says, that difficulty. Is there any concern or question about that?
I just want to make a comment, Brother Shankara.
Yes, dear.
Seems the universe is the same, it doesn't change, but our perceptions keep changing. How we see the universe, is that what he means?
No, well, that too, in a sense, yes. But your universe, Haima,
Right.
is different than Robert Ayres's universe.
Exactly. The way I see it, that the way I perceive it is different from what others see it.
Yes.
Right? That's
because of the particular names and forms that are deeply known to you and that you are comfortable with. These become our individual particular limitations, in Sanskrit, upadhis, our descriptions. And so the universe that we share, we have a lot in common. Otherwise, we couldn't do this. But if we really get down to it, if we begin to compare notes with any other capable, intellectually, I mean, capable, articulate human being, we will see that our view of the universe, our understanding of the universe, differs significantly from theirs,
Yes.
which is why Vivekananda ultimately published in London a tract. That's what he called it, and what they were called in those days. And the tract was Each Man His Own Sect. Now, the pronoun, of course, man, each human being, her or his own sect. That's how we'll ultimately end up if we are sincere, because our understanding, even as a realized soul, which is where he's guiding us, even as a realized soul, will not be the same. This is why you can have two swamis within 500 miles of each other, titans, Swami Ashokananda in San Francisco in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and Swami Prabhavananda in Los Angeles, Hollywood, during that same period. And you see that they approach the thing very differently, and so drew different kinds of people to them. These were two great swamis of the Ramakrishna order, both disciples of direct disciples. Ashokananda was a disciple of Vivekananda. Swami Prabhavananda was a disciple of Swami Brahmananda, Raja Maharaj. And yet, how differently they taught Vedanta. So and there's nothing wrong in that. There's nothing that says, well, one of them must be right and the other one wrong. No, 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 no. We cannot confine the infinite to any one set of ideas. This is why the Swami says, in the first place, the universe we see is our own particular universe, our own view of the reality. And Haima, as you pointed out, it is ever changing, as are we. And so, particularly if we're not one of those people who tries to cling to a particular frame of reference and set of ideas and limitations, then we will be more fluid.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. That clarifies. Thank you.
Anyone else about this idea of the universe that you experience is your own particular universe, your own view of the reality? Yes, Robert.
I've been studying that particular piece, and
by that you mean the Kata Upanishad?
Yes, yes, and it appears to me that what it says that none of it is real.
Yes, well,
okay,
in the fundamental, ultimate sense, no.
Yeah, but it seems to me that it is a process. In each soul is in a different place in their process.
Yes.
And each soul gets what it needs at that particular instance, or at any particular instance, but it's all going to the same place.
Yes.
And once we arrive there, then we'll all be the same, because there is only one. But the process of getting there, it's like, I teaching music. I wouldn't start out with a student that's advanced with beginner scales.
Mm-hmm.
The beginner scales are perfectly fine and appropriate for a person that's at that place.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing with this religion. If you are at a particular place in your evolution of life, you will encounter and you will be presented with the challenges that you need at that time for you to move to the next level.
Yes, exactly. We each are given, as you said, that which will support and nourish us.
Yes.
And we'll each come to our own realization of the infinite.
Right.
But as Vivekananda points out, in a different place, we each start toward the center from where we are. And each one of us is in a very different, and he gestures toward a diagram, anyway, of people starting toward the center from where they are. It's
this might clear it up for some people that have problems with it. You would not give a person that's dying of thirst food. You give them water.
Exactly.
And that's what this is. The person. And so you can't say, well, water is not correct. Well, for that person at that time, that's what they need.
Exactly. And this is the difficulty, of course, that Swami Vivekananda is facing, trying to describe this and talk about this to a room full of people who are each very different one from another. Swayam, was there something else?
Yes, Brother Shankara, I just wanted to know, were Swamis Brahmananda and Swami Vivekananda, did they approach this teachings differently, being that they both were direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna?
Yes, very differently. If you want to know what I mean, read Swami Vivekananda's Practical Vedanta, that little book, Practical Vedanta, and then read Swami Prabhavananda's book, The Eternal Companion. Brahmananda never wrote any books. Brahmananda was tasked with being the president and of the Ramakrishna Math and Mission, but he delivered a lot of teachings, many of those teachings were recorded by his disciples. And you can see how deeply differently, but they didn't contest with one another. It wasn't that they were at odds with one another. You can see that they simply were heading toward the same center on two different radii, two different radius, paths toward that same center. And this is why Ashokananda taught Vedanta differently, which was primarily from the Jnana perspective, Jnana karma, and Swami Prabhavananda taught it from the Bhakti karma perspective. So they taught differently. Vivekananda and Brahmananda were not in any way at odds with one another. They harmonized, but and Sri Ramakrishna did not teach every one of his direct disciples in any sense of the word the same way. Each one of them received something very special from Sri Ramakrishna. And you can see this reflected in the gospel, because you can see how differently he teaches M. M is one of his direct disciples, and he gives him very specific instructions, some of which M reveals in the gospel.
Thank you.
Anything else from anyone?
Yes, Brother Shankara.
Yes, dear.
I was just thinking, that could be the reason that how the teacher knows the personality of each disciple, and then that's how he kind of caters to the, teaching his different style.
Yes. And as a matter of fact, I would submit, Nira, that the teacher sees more deeply than just the personality. They see into the spiritual formation of the disciple at the moment that they encounter them. And yes, the personality is part of that, but personality is just we have a psychological being, a psychic being, and a spiritual being. 3 aspects of us. And the guru sees them all. But yes, you're right. They see deeply into us. And that's why their teaching is different for each of us. And they see that we each have a different, this creative aspect of the divine. We are part of that creative aspect. We are joyously created, as the great saints tell us over and over. We are joyously the creation of the divine. As God said to Hafiz, each soul completes me. God said this to Hafiz. Each soul completes me. So we are inseparably one with the divine being in that completion. Thank you, Nira. Anyone else? All right.
One of my teachers told me years ago, do not teach anything that you don't know 10 times beyond what you're teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Because a question is going to come up and it's going to lead to the next level, and it's going to get beyond you. So, but the only problem with that is when the gap of knowledge between the teacher and the student becomes so great that the 2 of them are on completely different paths. And a teacher says, like Christ could not teach a person today of a very low level because they would never be able to understand what he's teaching.
You're so right. You're absolutely so right.
Yeah.
If you want to read this in the life of Christ, read his interaction with and his attempt to teach Nicodemus. It is really instructive of how even Christ could not reach Nicodemus.
So that intellectual gap can't be too big, and it shouldn't be too small.
Well, this is why I said what I said early on about Swami Vivekananda having had Nirvikalpa Samadhi twice before he delivered these lectures.
Yes, I've been thinking about that the entire class, and that inspires me to want to go to Thousand Island Park, but they don't have anywhere to stay there, do they?
Well, there are plenty of places that you can stay nearby. There are, it's a resort community. The island is part of a resort community, so there are places to stay. But you have to make arrangements with the Ramakrishna Vivekananda Society of New York, the East Side Center, to visit with them when they have their gathering there, and I believe it's in July. But if you want to meet with them and be part of their activities, but you can go sit on that rock where Vivekananda had his second Nirvikalpa Samadhi.
Yes.
You can visit
I've
that.
been to Thousand Island Park when Swami Adishwarananda conducted a retreat there, and he was amazing. Such a great sense of humor he had.
Yes.
And people were sitting on that rock and doing their meditation there, you know.
Yes.
And there's a cottage down the hill where Swami Vivekananda stayed, the original cottage.
Yes, Mrs. Dutcher's cottage. Yes, that's where he delivered the talks after he had this Nirvikalpa realization. He delivered a series of talks in June and July that are collected together, the records of them as inspired talks.
Now I want to go there. You got me inspired.
Well, get your tail in gear then.
See, I used to go to that temple there, and I had the opportunity to go, and I didn't go. I regret it now. But they go every year.
Yeah.
In the summer.
Brother Shankara, Rishikesh here.
Yes.
Sir, you were saying something about the Samadhi, the Nikal Samadhi of Swami Vivekananda, with what Mr. Ayers was describing about the gap between the teacher and the student. I think you had that line of thought. I don't know if you finished.
The Nirvikalpa Samadhi, that Swamiji was, there was no gap between Swami Vivekananda and his students. He encompassed all beings in his, if you study his life and his teachings, you'll see what I mean. There was no gap, but it was, here he is trying to explain to a room full of people, each of whom is very different from each of the others. So it isn't as if he was having any difficulty formulating his own thoughts and communicating to them. But as all great communicators know, if your audience doesn't understand, it's not the audience's fault, it's the communicator's fault. So Swami, this is why he was at such at pains to explain this so carefully and thoughtfully. And there were students like Margaret Noble, who became Sister Nivedita, who would stay after class and go at him hammer and tongs about these ideas, make sure that she understood. Because a lot of these were very foreign ideas to her. She came from a deeply Christian background. But it isn't that he couldn't bridge the gap. He could bridge the gap. Robert was talking about more ordinary kinds of teaching and as teacher-student relationships. I don't think there was any difficulty with Swamiji.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, how are we doing for time? Well, we've got just 6 minutes left. I'll just finish this thought and then I'll repeat what I said. Such a solution of the universal problem as we can get from the outside labors under this difficulty that in the first place, the universe we see is our own particular universe, our own view of the reality. That reality we cannot see through the senses. We cannot comprehend it. We only know the universe from the point of view of beings with 5 senses. Suppose we obtain another sense. The whole universe must change for us. And if you want to know what he's pointing to read Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, because you gain the psychic sense, the super sensuous psychic sense through the dedicated practice of yoga. Suppose we obtain another sense, the whole universe must change for us. Suppose we had a magnetic sense. It is quite possible that we might find millions and millions of forces in existence which we did not know and for which we have no present sense or feeling. Our senses are limited, very limited indeed. And within these, and let's underline that, our senses are limited, very limited indeed. And if you want to know what's meant by that in a profound way, just read the current research on perception and how easy it is to deceive our senses because they are so limited. We're all familiar with optical conclusions and things like that, but that's just the beginning of things. So if we had a magnetic sense, we might find millions and millions of forces in existence which we did not know and for which we have no present sense or feeling. Our senses are limited, very limited indeed. And within these limitations exists what we call our universe. And our God is the solution of that universe. But that cannot be the solution of the whole problem. But man cannot stop there. He is a thinking being and wants to find a solution which will comprehensively explain all the universes. He wants to see a world which is at once the world of men and of gods and of all possible beings, and to find a solution which will explain all phenomena. Is that not the case? Isn't that what freedom means? Freedom from limitation? The understanding of all phenomena. Let me know that, what Sri Ramakrishna said, I don't want a breadwinning education. I want to know that by which all else is known. That's what he told his brother when his brother wanted him to get an education that would earn money for the family. Sri Ramakrishna said, I don't want a breadwinning education. I want to know that by which all else is known. And there's a beautiful poem by Saint Teresa of Avila about encountering an old monk. She's walking in the streets of Rome and feeling sad. And it's a dark street, no lights. She encounters an old monk whose cowl is up over his head, and he doesn't take any note of her. He just passes her by, and he's saying to God, Dear God, tell me all that you know. Dear God, tell me all that you know. And what a potent prayer. A solution which will explain all phenomena. So that's where we'll leave it off for this time. We'll pick it up. We'll read a little bit back and read into what comes next week. But anything at all from anyone based on where we are?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
thought came to me that this whole idea of sunrise and sunset is such an example of our limitation of senses and or knowledge, we cannot see, feel, in any way know the earth's rotation. So we think that the sun is rising and setting. Um, whether it's limitation of our senses or not, but that limitation is so obvious.
That's why there's those beautiful lines in that beautiful Beatles song, Fool on the Hill. The fool on the hill sees the sun going down, and the eyes in his head see the world spinning round and round and round and round. So he sees, his eyes see the sun going down, but the eyes in his head, his inner knowledge, knows that that's not, the sun is not moving, the earth is moving.
That song was about Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and it was one of the songs that inspired me to start meditation.
Yes. It started out as a song about the way the story goes. I know somebody who really knows the Beatles awfully well. I mean, really deeply. His name is Tommy Archibald. And apparently that song started out to be about the Maharishi, but then began to encompass, the rishis, the real seers, beyond the Maharishi. So that's what was a joy about having those two Beatles writing those songs. They struck sparks off one another. Anyway, The Fool on the Hill. It's worth your finding on YouTube, finding a beautiful rendition of it. It's a great song. Oh, dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, come to me, offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this, your jungle world. Om, Amen. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. Peace be unto us and unto all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. And may you go forward in the loving embrace of the Divine Being as Father and Mother. So until next time.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
This next opportunity for us to get together, of course, would be Saturday when we're studying Swami Prabhavananda's talk on yoga. And then on Sunday, the talk will be on the Jnana Yogi's way of life. How does a Jnana Yogi actually live in such a way that they can pursue the knowledge of Jnana Yoga, of Advaita? Any final thought or just anything to be said by anyone? All right, dears.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's always such a delight. Good night, everyone.
Good night.